Latest news poll, Reach poll again, shows the government heading for that inevitable election loss, whenever the heck it would be it the end of next year, should there be a change of PM, or if the current one can somehow hold on, we go to 2019. But yet again, the big story always remains that the primary vote of the Liberal Party is now below the Labor Party. This is the third poll in a row. News poll, Essential, Reach that tell the same story. Once again, for everyone playing along with the bouncing ball, let's all say it at home. 41% is the primary vote that you need to get a 50-50 result if you're the Liberal Party, right? That's what you need. They are well and truly below that right now. One Nation's sitting at 10%. There's obviously plenty of others, and that's where the good Senator Lionhelm and many others on the crossbench sit. But, well, I mean, let's go inside how this is working inside Canberra, though, with you, Senator, and that's your two-party preferred, your better Prime Minister as well. Still remains Turnbull and Shorten, but that is getting a whole lot closer and a lot scarier than that number's ever been. But, Senator Lionhelm, I mean, how is it working in Canberra? When they come to you, cap in hand, to negotiate something, is it quiet? Is it desperate? Is it we've got to get runs on the board? What's the demeanour of the government? Certainly not desperate. There's no feeling of it's all over. I think there probably is a bit of a different atmosphere between the Senate and the House, because they get very rabbly and ratbaggy in the House, and whereas the Senate we're a little more dignified, although you'd never know that from time to time. There are times when we're not. But I think the ministers that I deal with who want my support are relatively philosophical that, yes, I think, OK, they're down in the polls, but they could leave it until June or July 2019, nearly 2 years away before an election has to be called. That's assuming they can hang on and lose the majority. So I think, you know, the old saying, a week is a long time in politics, well, 2 years is an eternity. Yeah. Anything could happen, you know, anything could happen at all. So I don't think there's any panic. There's also a feeling there's no other leader that they can turn to. So they're going to make the best of it, I think. And in terms of getting stuff through the Senate, they are getting better, patchily, still patchily, but they're bringing stuff up that they're reasonably confident will get up, or that they think they can campaign on and make a big issue of it and expose Labor's position on. So, you know, that from a political point of view, that makes sense. But there's also things where, I mean, there was a big win for them last week that, to be honest, I thought was still before the Parliament, and it wasn't until, you know, I was reading something else that I was aware, that they passed the law that would mean the actions of Bill Shorten as a union leader would be illegal. Now, that is a huge win. It's a big Conservative tick. It's a big thing that, you know, brings back the base, all the rest of it here. But, Gary, literally no one reported on this last week because it was all about which senator may or may not get bounced based off their citizenship, of which no one has to go back to the polls. As an issue, sure, it's you know, fascinating, but there's always another person who'll replace them. Barnaby Joyce is the only story that matters because it affects the numbers in the lower house, and he will get returned should there be a by-election in New England.
Yes, but Paul, there's no guarantee there'll be a by-election in New England. I mean, I've got to say to you that I think you're probably right, but equally you could also be probably wrong. And I'm sorry, there is this 50-50 because there's equally a chance that the Court of Disputed Returns will in fact look at the person who came second and appoint them the winner. So in other words, Tony Windsor would go back into the House as the member for New England. So that is a real, genuine possibility that could come out of this. Now, you know, that's 2 months away. And the big problem, Paul, for the government is that no matter how many things they are trying to do to get on top of the agenda, to come up with new initiatives, to get things passed, to make new announcements, to talk about Snowy 2.0 and all of these things, it just keeps coming back to the clowns in their midst. And look, the reality is 95% of members of Parliament could actually understand what it was when they were signing their declaration to become members. We're only still talking about 7 so far, although I understand it could be twice as many as that, 15 to 20. And the government are understandably worried that they may well find a House that's filled with a new member for New England, a new member for Dawson because of the George Christensen thing, and then if there's 6 or 8 or whatever in the Labor Party, there could all be a whole bunch of Liberal people in a whole bunch of safe Labor seats. I mean, the whole thing could go almost anyway. So guess what? That's much much more interesting than governments doing their job. That's
Correct.
why they're talking about it.
We'll get deeper into citizenship in a moment or two's time, because the Senator's got a very important opinion when it comes to the audit side of things. We'll get into that in the next break. But just, Darren, just on the politics, I mean, as I said, 50-50 result, which was a disaster for Malcolm Turnbull, was 41% primary. They're now at 32% primary. It's broken off. It's broken off to the right.
News poll's still saying it's 38 Labor, 36 Liberal, so I think it's probably a touch higher than what was in Reach-Tell.
But even then,
but they can't
they're
win
in the
the
hole.
election.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is absolutely true, and we suffered this during the Gillard years, that you might have a good policy, what you thought was a good policy announcement, but that white noise of illegitimate parliament, of Craig Thompson's vote, of all of these things just continually provided so much atmospherics that the gallery would report it, Talkback would talk about it, people would talk about it. And I think you'll find that for Turnbull at the moment, it's a mixture of citizenship, but also the same-sex marriage plebiscite, I think, is taking up a lot of the kind of airspace. And so government announcements, for example, Scott Morrison tried to make a big announcement about the Medicare levy increase. He was close to getting crossbench support. It lasted half a day. So I think they're in a hole, and that hole will continue until the High Court resolves the Court of Disputed Returns and the same-sex marriage plebiscite is completed.
All right, take a quick break. We'll talk a bit more citizenship, but there's other stuff to get to, including the government has decided to go very hard on Bill Shorten, and I say they aren't kicking hard enough. More in a second.